Hey everybody, this is Matt Bissonette from the Redcoats, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is my co-host,
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any pod catchers. You can find us on Facebook or Twitter at No Shot Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Tuesday evening at 10 p.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records in beautiful downtown Rock Island, Illinois, soon to be coming back to downtown Davenport, Iowa. We would like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for our intro and bumper ending music.
All right, we got guests tonight. We got Matt Bissonette, current bass player for Elton John.
Yeah, the project right now is the Redcoats,
Yep,
right?
the Redcoats.
He's also been with David Lee Roth.
Joe Satriani.
And oodles of others. I believe Rick Springfield,
Rick
too.
Springfield
right?
for several number of years. Definitely an interesting interview.
Well, very insightful guy. We want to get him back on because he had such great stories to tell, a great storyteller. And he was very jovial about his past and the things that he had been involved with, him and his brother Greg. And if you're not familiar with Greg Bissonette, he was the original drummer on the Eat 'em and Smile album for David Lee Roth. So,
And they've been on a lot of projects together. We're quite the duo.
Yes, they have. So they've done many things together, worked together quite a bit. It seems like it's also sometimes can cause a family feud with the two of them. if I can remember the stories he was telling us about him and his brother. So, but anyway, as far as music news, nothing really hot and heavy in the music news business right now, except for, once again, COVID-19 just dominating everything. There's no social life. We just sit in our homes and become alcoholics, I guess.
Yeah.
But hey, let's not jibber jabber anymore. Let's get to this interview.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast, Matt. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Great, man. Thanks for having me. It took me a while to figure out that your name is actually Jeff because the way it's spelled.
Yeah.
I was gonna go Geoff on you, and then I was like,
hey, that's all right.
All right.
Matt, it's an honor to talk to you tonight.
Honor to speak with you, both of you.
Oh, fantastic. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the correspondence that we've had the last week, trying to get everything solidified for this. So we are so excited to have you. I have so many questions for you that we're not going to be able to fit into the time frame. So hopefully what we'll do is you'll have such a good time doing this, you'll want to come back for a part 2.
I might move in with you guys the way things are going. So come on, let's just plan on it.
So let's start this off right now. So the biggest question right now is, how have you been handling COVID-19 pandemic professionally and socially? How's it been for you?
Well, I guess the good and the horrible thing is that the whole world is going through this thing together. So you can't really complain because nobody will listen to you because they're going through the exact same thing. Everyone's got different levels of what's going on. My biggest thing is that I hate is when somebody goes, "Oh, this thing has been really good for me because I've been able to work more than I have before," and I feel like going, "Shut up!" What are you talking about? This is horrible. So, I was over in New Zealand, I think, with Elton playing, and one day I remember he got really sick on stage and just kind of looked at me. Kind of this blank stare on his face. It was in the middle of this big concert with tons of people, and he just stopped playing. He looked at me and kind of signaled me to come over, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And then next thing I knew, there's paramedics on the side checking him out and doing stuff, and I could have sworn that he might have gotten COVID then, but probably not. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know about that, but there's words of that thing was going around super early back then. So I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that a lot of us had probably had it and stuff like that. But I remember, being out there on the road and and then just kind of getting the call that we're done with the tour, and then we came back to America. And I remember when we got back to the States, the weird thing was when we were in Australia was in November, December, and all the fires were going on then. And so I was wearing a face mask back then, thinking how horrible it would be to have to wear this thing all the time, And as soon as we landed in America, we toured through March, came home around March 9th into LAX, and when we got off the plane, there it is, like the end of the world, like every outbreak movie we've ever seen, everybody wearing the mask and everybody talking on the news like it's a Morgan Freeman movie, and he's it's and then I just kind of realized this thing might be bigger than we think, and so basically when I got back home, my son plays baseball. He got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he came home. He's in the minor league system, and he came home a week later, and I was just thinking, yeah, a couple of weeks it will go by and he'll go back, and then we'll go back on the road, and then weeks turned into months, and it was kind of like nobody was talking, nobody was saying anything, and the whole world just kind of waiting to see what happened. And then it got as bad as it has gotten, and then everyone's just been kind of looking at each other, and pretty much I think with the music business, it's pretty much the way it is with everybody right now. Everyone just kind of realized you come to the conclusion that you're totally mortal, and that none of this stuff is really important, because you see people dying and you see people sick, and I think as equally as bad as people having their businesses shut down and not being able to work and losing their jobs and losing businesses and seeing that whole thing happen. And it's just been horrible for that. But I guess as musicians, we're kind of used to going, week to week, mouth to mouth, and however they say it. And you just automatically go into this mode of, I'm going to take every session I can get. I'm going to watch my overhead and not spend as much as I, usually do, and try and be smart with it, because, I'm basically, with my life, I've kind of always been a hired musician that goes out with different artists all the time. And I do my own writing and do my own bands and stuff like that. Yeah. But lately, in the last 25, 30 years, I've been touring a lot. So it's the highs and lows of making a ton of money. Then you come back, and then I remember I took the place of Bob Birch, who was the bass player with Elton before I came in. And I remember he'd come back from the road with Elton, and a day later he's playing at a wedding or a bar mitzvah or something. I'm going, what do you do? I mean, because we're from Detroit, and you guys are from Illinois, Chicago, right? And
right.
So you guys know what the work ethic is and how that goes. We're just born to work, worker bees and stuff. So he would always be doing these gigs, and I think I've kind of done the same thing. So when I got back, I just kind of looked at the whole picture and kind of dug in and realized this is probably going to be a long haul thing. And we just moved into a new house, so I haven't even got my studio completely fixed, which is probably a blessing, so that I don't spend all my money on family projects and stuff. But it's been good in only a couple ways for me, and that's that I've gotten to write a bunch of stuff that I've never really had the time to do. Like, I'm sure everybody in your show will say, I've had the time to do what I've wanted to do. It sounds so weird and vain, but it has been good for that. But I just feel horrible for everybody that's had to suffer through this thing, and hopefully there's an end in sight. And I remember talking to people about this about 10 years ago, and I was saying it up until this thing happened. I said, the music business, and you talk about essential businesses. I think that's the first thing that got swatted away with a fly, is the music business, because you realize, this thing's hanging by a thread, the whole business. And over the years, musicians have shot themselves in the foot with making money and giving away their music and stuff. It's kind of this slow decline of musical value. And I remember Steve Lukather used to always go, he talked to him, and I go, how's it going? And he goes, there's no business. That's it. I mean, sometimes we're a breath away from no business in the music business. So I remember telling people a while ago, and I hate to say it now because I hate even hearing my own voice saying that. I go, but what if something happens, God forbid, like an EMP attack happens and all the electricity is out on our nation, we'd probably eat each other, first of all, and we'd probably just disintegrate, and the new generation of kids with the iPhone, none of us would really know what to do with ourselves. And I had this weird vision that my grandson someday would say, Granddaddy, you mean to tell me you used to take plane trips to places, and then you'd go out in buses, and you'd drive into a city, and you would play for thousands of people, and then you'd they build all the stuff in an arena, then they take it down and people would go home, and then you pack it up and you take the circus to the next city, and you do that, because I remember when Daryl's Garage was starting and all these online things going on, I'm going, that's what's going to happen. I mean, if God forbid, if anything bad happens, and sure enough, through this thing, you can just see people just go to that, and that's awesome that people have figured that out and trying to find ways to make a thing, but it's just so sad because it's just not good. It's just, there's nothing like, you can learn a piece of music and you play it with your band in the rehearsal hall, and then when you play it for real in front of people, it's just different, and I think that's what everybody misses, and it's sad, but everyone's just doing what they got to do,
And before this kind of spawns a question that I didn't have prepared, but we've had artists on, Ricky Warwick, and we've had Rob Vander Ark from the Verpipe on, and they're doing those social distancing shows where they're doing it live through the internet, and they're charging people $5 per person to do it. And obviously Ricky was really candid when he says, I don't expect people to do this all the time, so I just try to do it once a month or what have you. Right. But what are your feelings on doing that as a means for income? Are you in on something like that, or is that something like this is kind of out of your realm?
Oh no, man, I am not holier than thou at all on anything. I think musicians, if anything, this has given the music business the jolt that it needs to come to reality, that it can all be gone in a second, just like life in general. I mean, nothing's more important than your real life of who you are, and knowing that someday you're going to pass away, and knowing where you're going to go when you die, or if you don't believe in God, or if you do believe, just looking at the big picture of what life is. I think this has kind of been like an electrocution shock on most musicians to go, yeah, I'm pretty irrelevant right now, and the whole thing can be irrelevant in a second, And I think that it's made musicians kind of think out of the box about, like, well, what can I do to make this happen? The first week that I came back, and I'm not ashamed to say this at all, because being from the East Coast and being a worker guy, like I'm sure you guys are, and most of the East Coast guys are, first thing I did was I got my lift license, and I went, I am going to go from playing in front of a ton of people with a big famous band to picking up people, and I've got no problem with it, because if I can feed my family, I can feed myself. What else are you supposed to do? So to have any moral thing about saying I'm not going to do this or not do that, I gave that up years ago, because I've kind of realized my own music mortality is day to day, and the best thing I think that I've got going through the years is staying humble, because when I go out with bands, it's kind of the musical mirage, I call it. You get, you're playing in a club band, and you're playing Madonna, Material Girl, or you're playing whatever it is at the time, and then you get a gig, and then you make a bunch of money on it, and you're out there, and then people think all of a sudden like you're this amazing player and stuff, but you're the same guy that was just playing Material Girl. It's just you're with a band. So I've done every bad gig there ever was, and I've been playing since I was 12 years old, playing gigs. So I'm pretty grounded as far as just going, I know not to take this too seriously, and I know it can end anytime. So when I come home from any tour, my wife just laughs at me, because I think I've just realized through my son and my wife that I have ADHD, or whatever you call it, because my legs are always moving like crazy. I'm kind of going from one thing to another, because on the road, I've been on the road since 1981 pretty much. Yeah. And it's just going from one city to another and doing something. And then when you come home, you just go, wow, what do I do now? So I think my son has pointed out, because he thinks he has it too, that you just get real edgy, and you get like you want to go someplace, but then you work your whole life so that you can live in your house with your family and stuff. It's kind of like post-traumatic, that thing, because you just go, what do I do now? And when the biggest thing that hit me was when people retire, they usually die, a couple of years later, after they've played all the golf they can play, and after they've eaten all the pizza they can eat. Eventually, if you don't have your purpose, it's over, no matter what. Your purpose is your purpose, and it's very important. And this whole thing has made me just go, I am going to write some stuff that I've been threatening myself to do. I am going to go through with it. I'm going to finish everything I start and make the most of this. And try and come back. And I still we haven't heard a clue about if we were supposed to go back out in September to Europe with Elton, but I haven't really heard too much about it. And I think nobody really knows, so nobody's talking, So it's, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I've been looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jeff.
So you've been playing with Elton John for about 8 years now. What's one of the most memorable tours?
I probably the new ones that we're doing, the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour, the farewell tour, because we're playing all the the big songs, and it's a real incredible show to watch, and it's just fun to do, and it's just been kind of a up and down, kind of a crazy thing. I started in 2012 with my friend Bob Birch. He passed away. And then some of the guys knew me from being friends with Bob and different things. And I started in 2012, and I remember just learning all the songs. I got the last gig that Bob ever did. I wanted to honor Bob and just write down everything that he played on that last show, so that when I showed up, the band wouldn't miss a beat. It would just be like he was there. And I had 2 guys. I paid them to write out everything, and then I learned it all in like a week, and I had to, I learned like 100 songs, because it was 2.5 hours worth of music. Got out there, played it, and Elton was so cool. He goes, man, I really appreciate you doing this thing. I mean, I even played Bob's bass and had all his gear, and it kind of was like a pretty seamless transition where it wasn't, I'm sure I made tons of mistakes and stuff, but it wasn't like the whole show fell apart. So I felt like I kind of honored Bob by making it good like that. But I remember about the 3rd or 4th show, Elton he called me, and we were coming back to the plane from a gig, and he was in the other car, and he called me. He goes, man, I really appreciate that you learned all this stuff and that you've done all this, but I want you to play whatever you want to play, because you're the guy in the band now, and just do what you want, and that's what a guy that's been around, and a professional guy like him, he wants it to change. He wants it to get to another level or just be different, because it's probably boring for him if it's, the same old stuff, So, and that's one of the things with Elton that I really have learned, because when I was about 19 years old, I went on the road with Maynard Ferguson, the jazz trumpet player, and he was probably Elton's age now when I started, maybe a little bit younger. But I remember with Maynard, all he wanted to do every night was make the show, whatever it was, the most amazing show possible. I remember one night we played in Cincinnati. It was like 35,000 people at a jazz festival, and we played, and we were all 19-year-old guys, and we were just flipping out that there were that many people. And I remember the next day, coming down from the high, it's the first time I ever played for that many people, and we were doing another gig. We're taking the bus up to Colorado or something, and it was snowing like crazy, and hardly anybody could make the show because they were getting snowed in. But we got there, and there was only a few families there, and we were backstage, and some of us were going, oh man, we just played this jazz festival in front of 30. Now there's going to be like 50 people here. And Maynard saw us do that, and he pulled together the band, and he goes, you guys, I know what you're thinking, and tonight you're going to play better than you've ever played, because you're playing for each other, and you're playing for these people. It doesn't matter how many people are there. You play because you love it. And that was the best the band ever sounded that night. And it was such an amazing lesson, because that's what guys that I've worked with that are, from Joe Satriani to Rick Springfield to Jeff Lynne and Boss Skaggs, all these guys, and David Lee Roth, all these guys, they are where they are because they're the cream of the crop guys that they're not just putting in the hours. This is their butts on the line. And every night they go out there, they want it to be great. So like with Elton, I mean, he just doesn't stop, man. He's like an animal. And the funniest thing for me, just to this day, every time I think about it, is, I mean, the guy's been around, done everything, and I'm the new guy. And because I'm right next to him, I'm the guy that gets all the positives and negatives. If something's wrong, man, I hear about it, he'll start screaming, and I'm right there. okay. But if it's really good, he's like talking to me and everything. But every night he'll play something different on the piano, because he plays it different every night. He never plays the same thing twice. And he'll look at me like a little boy and smile and like, did you see that? Did you see what I just did? And then he wants me to go, man, that's awesome. That's great. And I look at him. That's that human interaction. I think that's missing on the internet, missing in anything.
Definitely.
Even when I went to coffee with a friend of mine, I called him the other day to meet him at Starbucks. He goes, just come over to the house. And I go, no, you get out of the house, you meet me at Starbucks. So he turns the corner, and I'm sitting there waiting for him, and he turns the corner, and he sees my face, and I see his face, and all of a sudden, there's that little spark of, yeah, man, it's good to see you. We're out of the house, and we're hanging out. I mean, that's what it is to me, and that's what it is, I think, to these guys, these real stars, that they just love that human interaction. And I just pray that this thing changes and something happens where people can go back to it, you know?
Absolutely. So we have you on because we really want to talk about Reddcoats. So this is an exciting time for you, along with your brother and the rest of the members of the band, and including a Nothing Shocking podcast alum, Andy Timmons. Yeah. And so can you tell our listeners more about this new band? I mean, probably a lot of our listeners don't even realize the Reddcoats are up and running right now. So we need to know about the origins, the story of the band, how it all got together.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. So the band is called the Reddcoats, and it's interesting enough with two Ds because the Reddcoats, I guess, are another band. So we didn't want to go to jail or even get into that. So we just slipped in a quick little letter there. And basically, I mean, I've been thinking, I mean, I've had a bunch of my own bands, a band called the Mustard Seeds and different bands over the years and stuff. And that's what I really, really love to do. It's interesting coming from Detroit because my dad is a professional drummer, and my dad's was a real hardworking guy, and he equated your success with what job you have at the time and who you're playing with music. Like when my brother got the gig with David Lee Roth, it was like the greatest thing in the world because he was making a good living and he could come see him play and stuff. And he equated success with the band you're playing in. And I remember at the time when I was younger, I was frustrated because I loved writing songs and doing my own band, but doing your own band is so much harder. And it's like from the ground up, you're not making any money. You're just going through this stuff. And we'd always joke about it. And my dad would be going, "Hey, Matt, Rod Stewart's looking for a bass player." And I'm going, "Dad, I don't want to go on the road. I want to be in my own band." You know, so that is my thing that really rocks my world, is writing music with a band or by myself and playing it live in front of people. So I started goofing off with a couple of songs on the road because everyone brings their studios out on the road and their laptops and stuff, and you have so much downtime on the road. You just go for long walks on days off where you write something or do tracks in your room for people or whatever. And I've always loved, growing up, the music on the radio, on AM radio when I was a kid, would have bands like Chicago, Kansas. It would be like Weather Report. It'd be salsa bands. It'd be everything on the AM radio. It's just like you turn the knob and it's this open thing that's not like now where everything's programmed and it has its category. So that with Greg and I, my brother, we always grew up listening to every style of music, and that's kind of what we pride ourselves on is for sessions, is to be able to play, you know, any kind of music. I mean, I'm not the best bass player in the world by any regards on any style of music, but I can play a little bit of everything to hold my own, to do a good job for the person I'm working for. And if I don't have it together, I'm going to work on it so that it's better next time or whatever. But we always wanted to get together and do our own band with different kind of music and stuff. So I remember my friend Mike Medina, who was the co-producer and percussionist and jack of all trades, the guy plays everything. He was in Dallas with Elton, and he invited my friend Billy White, and he was a great guitar player in Dallas, invited me to go hear Andy's band playing with my friend John Adams, bass player in Dallas. So I had a night off, so we went and saw him, and the whole night I couldn't take my eyes off of Andy because he was just, everything he was doing was so cool. You know, he just seemed like a really cool guy, and he's playing guitar the way I love guitar players, like a Mike Stern kind of a guy, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, all wrapped up in Andy Timmons, you know. So I just said, "Hey, man, we got to do something," you know. So I came home from the road and I wrote one kind of a pop song that I was doing for something else, and he played on it. And then I just wrote this first song on the album called I'm Only the Messenger. And then I sent them the files. And then Mike kind of said, "We should do a band with this thing. We should get this going." So I got Greg and I played the tracks in LA. And then I sent the keyboard tracks for Wally Minko, a great keyboard player, friend of mine from years ago. He played the first, you know, track, and then Andy played on it. I sang on it, did the thing, and I said that was pretty cool, you know. So let's write one more. So I just kept writing and writing and writing, and it kept getting, everybody just started getting into it, and it just kind of turned into a thing, you know. And unfortunately, none of us were ever in the same room together, and all that stuff. But the thing I wanted to do was to really make it like we're playing off of each other. I mean, it's one thing when you do tracks and it sounds like 5 different guys just plowing through a track because they're in the room by themselves. But the weirdest thing was that these guys are so musical. When they actually would play off of each other, like Greg would play a drum lick and Andy would just play something that matched that. And it was like a first take for him. And so I figured, the smartest thing to do is just surround yourself with guys that are so good that it makes you look like a genius, you know? and so I don't know if they're making me look like a genius, but they're making it very, very good. And I'm really, really proud of the band, and everybody did a great job. And we got, 8 songs done and might do another one down the road. I mean, we don't know, but we've been contacted by a few people to go on the road and stuff. And, it'd be perfect timing to go out now and to play live, but I just, it's hard to book anything right now because who knows what's going to happen. But that's been a really, really great thing for me, is writing for that band and having something to do and having a purpose. And Mike and I, we kind of labored over it for about 8 months or so. And Mike did a great job mixing it. And we kind of just did everything over the phone and on Skype and FaceTime and stuff. And it would be awesome to one day start from scratch and do it the way that it's supposed to be, but I'm really happy with the way it came out. But thanks for asking that. So, but it's the Reddcoats.com with 2 D's, and we have our first single out called "Just Give Me the News." It's been out for about a month, and I think they're releasing the second single tomorrow, I think, or the 20th. And whatever that means these days about releasing a single or whatever even that means anymore.
For sure.
Yeah. Have you seen out on most social media where like bands will get together and they'll do like I don't know if they do it through Zoom or through one of those type of things where you'll have 4 or 5 different guys playing at the same time and playing a song live, and it seems like they're just seamless and doing an awesome job. Did you guys think of doing anything like that? I haven't dove into that yet to find out the logistics of how that works, because it's so amazing to me to think that you can do that. I mean, yeah. I've done recording sessions for jingles and stuff where they've hooked up with people on the East Coast and around the world, and it was seamless and stuff. I just haven't really done it myself, and I'm not really a tech head, so I don't know how that works. But if there is a format to do that, I would love to do that first before, just to jam together and then hopefully take it to the next level and see what happens. Because I mean, the hard part is if we go on the road again next September, we've only got a short window to do stuff. But then again, who knows if it'll ever happen again of going out on the road. But I would think that smaller venues would probably have a better chance of opening up first. But I'd love to check that out. If you guys know of any good things for that, I'm all ears.
I think, if memory serves me right, I think Dave Ellefson and Charlie Benante have done something like that just recently. Yeah. For Dave Ellefson's new album, was it No Cover or something like that, or something.
I'm a big fan of the group Europe, and they've been doing Friday nights live with Europe and playing live set together.
Oh, cool!
That's amazing, man. I want to check that out for sure.
You have took the reins as lead singer of the Reddcoats, I take it, and obviously, when you take the reins of the lead vocals, how massive is that for something like this? When you've been known to be, the guy that's been backing up the lead vocalist, now you're pushed out in front, in the front and center. How does that work for you now?
Well, fortunately, I mean, I've been singing since I was a little kid. I mean, when my mom and dad got me a bass, and I was excuse me, my dog's barking, so I'm trying to think if he's getting killed or not. My dog got taken by a coyote when he was a puppy, so now I got thinking about it all the time.
Oh, okay.
So when I was growing up, my mom and dad bought me a bass, and I went to the car to pick up the groceries, and there was this bass sitting there. So I just started playing bass, and that's when I was 12 years old. And my dad put me on a gig like 2 weeks later. He bought me a tuxedo and put me on a gig playing 4 hours a night in weddings and stuff in Detroit 2 nights a week for like $50 a night, which was like $1 million back then. So I got thrown into music and have been just doing it since then. And then in high school and stuff, we'd always be singing in rock bands and stuff, singing covers and stuff like that, and singing in top 40 bands and stuff like that. So I've always kind of been singing. But when I first started the Mustard Seeds, that was a holy smokes moment of, okay, now you're going to go up front and not just sing, but you got to talk to the crowd, you know, and you got to relate, and you got to do all the things that you're scared to death to do because you're in the back with a front man and you're going, man, I'm never going to be able to do that. And it was a pretty sobering experience the first few nights of just shaking. I mean, just physically shaking, going, what do you say to people in between songs, and standing up and looking people in the eye and singing, you know. But the good thing about the Mustard Seeds was that we had 4 lead singers, and so we figured we'd take a page from the Beatle book, and the way to overcome that was almost to insult the crowd in a way, in sarcasm, in a way that you were 4 guys together against the whole world. You know, like the Beatles would do. They'd never give you a straight answer, right? I mean, they do interviews, and you know, and they'd say, "Hey, John, what's that song about?" And you go, "Well, what does it mean to you?" You know, he'd always say stuff to put them on the edge, and so we quickly learned that, you know, as a comedian does with hecklers, that especially in club gigs, you got to have this, you know, the 4 beasts kind of going, okay, we're going to stand up for each other. So it really helped with doing that, and I think I've been doing that a long time now, since '92, I think is when we started the band. So I'm sure if we go back on the road, it's going to be, you know, getting back to doing that again is kind of tough. But I've always loved singing, and that's something I think that for young players, for whatever music business is going to be in the future, and I hope that it is even stronger than it was when I was growing up in the future. But I mean, you got to use everything you have, and you just can't just play rhythm guitar, or, you know, I love when guys say, what do you play? I play lead guitar, you know. So what does that mean? You sit around and you wait till you're solo, then you play your solo, and you know, you got to be able to play rhythm guitar, you got to be able to play funk, jazz, rock. You got to learn everything, and you got to learn to get a studio in your house and learn how to make your own music. You need to write and you need to sing, and you need to use everything you have in your arsenal if you want to do this, you know. And there's no reason. I remember when Pro Tools came in and all the engineers were going, I'm not going to go to that Pro Tools. The tape is the only thing. We got to use 2-inch tape. And those guys that were they either learn Pro Tools or they're gone. You know, you just have to be smart with what's coming. And so I just really focused a lot on singing. And to be honest, I'm probably doing more vocal work now in my studio than I am playing bass, for some reason, doing backgrounds and leads and writing lyrics for people and stuff like that. So I really like that myself, and I've always liked doing something different, and I'm trying to learn how to play better guitar and keyboards and try and learn the whole thing instead of just being a bass player, you know. So
that's awesome.
It's but there's no pressure especially with the Redcoats or bands like that, because you're sitting in your room by yourself just singing stuff, and if you suck at it, you know, you can just punch in and do it again, and nobody's looking, and it's kind of personal. But I kind of got over the whole fear of people hearing my voice, and they're either going to love your voice, like Geddy Lee. They either love that guy's voice, which I do, or they don't, you know, and you can't take it personal. You know, I remember my first few vocal sessions, I was nervous because I'm thinking, what do they think about me? Do they not like me? And I'm trying to change my voice, and I just go, this is who I am. If you like me, that's great. If you don't, you get somebody else, it's totally fine. So I think it's just all about humility and just, you know, knowing what you can do and what you can't do and what you're comfortable in. And I've learned enough humbling experiences to know what I don't want to do, probably more now than what I want to do, you know. And I know I have a hard time going on gigs where I don't know any of the songs and I fall on my face and everyone's looking at me like, this guy doesn't know the songs. I don't want to do that anymore. I know I don't want to do that anymore. Yeah. And I know I don't want to go sing like a Steve Perry song or something that I physically can't do it. I don't want to baloney my way into telling people I can sing that high when I can't. So I kind of learned what my range is, what I can do, and that's what I'm going to go with until the day I die.
From an outsider looking into the Redcoats music, labeling the band's sound is, I think, quite impossible. Yeah. I guess maybe I would have to say fusion at best in so many different ways. If you were going to label the Redcoats, what would you label the Redcoats sonically?
I think somebody said that it was like jazz, punk, rock, fusion, swing. You know, so
that about covers.
I mean, what we really like is I think the underlying theme of the whole thing is it's kind of greasy and a lot of percussion stuff going on, and kind of like that band War with Lowrider, and songs like that. It's kind of got this driving force of the percussion going. And then you got, they're really kind of pop songs that are kind of disguised in different sections, where everybody gets, like the first song is called Redcoat. And it's kind of like that Chicago, the band Chicago, their first album, Chicago Transit Authority, had a song called Introduction. Do you guys remember that song?
Yes.
And that song just kind of said, this is what the band is. This is an introduction to Chicago. And they play this, 8-minute song, and it goes through a bunch of different emotions and solos and different things. But it kind of sets the template of going, this is the band, and sit down, and we're not going to just play this one style of music. We're just going to do what we want to do, and we hope that you like it. And if you don't like it, you've got a lot of choices and go to the next thing. But this is what we like, And so I would say it's kind of a lot based on like that groove of war, but it's kind of a little bit like Weather Report, where it's kind of like fast heads of songs and melodies and different things that are going by. A lot of guitar, crazy stuff, and a lot of different, people jamming and playing. But then it's a lot like Beatles stuff. There's a lot of Beatle harmonies going on and different melodies, and I'm trying to sing like John Lennon once in a while and doing different things like that. And there's some swing, like some jazz stuff, and different things going on. And I just think it's kind of like a big bag of a bunch of different things. And I can't really pigeonhole it too much because, to listen to this, you got to kind of go, okay, I'm going to, for 45 minutes, sit down and listen to the whole thing. And I know myself, when I listen to a whole album, I can't make it to an album anymore of anything. Like when I go to a show, even if it's my favorite band in the world, I can only do like an hour and I'm done, because maybe it's because I'm older or whatever. But music now, we've gotten programmed to just listen to a few songs or whatever. So I realize that that's the way it is. So when you sit down to listen to this record, just kind of be open-minded to have it just go. To have it just kind of go where it goes, and be patient and just let everybody do their thing. Sorry, buddy, my son just came home. It's just kind of ups and downs and highs and lows all over the place. So I just ask for your patience. That's it.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Jeff.
You mentioned your brother Greg earlier, so plays drums, and so what a formidable team you guys make. You've been
and affordable.
Yeah. Both. And you've had the pleasure to work to work together on a lot of albums. So what makes you guys so? Besides Blood, what makes you guys such a good rhythm section?
Well, I think you said it. Blood. It's. I know him like he knows me, and there's nothing I don't know about him and him with me. I've just learned a lot from him. When I first got my bass when I was a little kid, we just went in the basement and played Smoke on the Water for 6 hours because it was the only thing first thing he showed me on the bass was Smoke on the Water. And I was like, so we've been playing, the Heartbeat started when I was 12 years old and sitting in the basement with him playing just that song for 6 hours or whatever it was. And we've gone through so many gigs and so many different styles of music together, and really, really highs and really, really lows, and touring things and original bands when we were kids and stuff, and going to college together. And we've just been through so much that I think we save people a lot of time when we record because we know exactly what we're going to do when we hear the song. Someone will come in with a song and they'll say, like with Joe Satriani, he was recording The Extremist, and he had gone through some rhythm sections and stuff, and he was just trying different things, and he called Greg and I to audition with him, and so we learned his demos for the song Friends and a couple different songs, and we just jammed, and he liked it, so we ended up going into the studio with Andy Johns in L.A. and at Ocean Way, I think, studio, and Joe knows exactly what he wants to do. You can't pull a rug over that guy's eye because he's very smart and he knows everything about music, and you can't really fake your way through it. You got to really know what you're doing. So he could kind of tell that Greg and I had our own little language going, and my brother calls it the music vocabulary, and he talks about this on his clinics all the time, and I think it's really great because you can talk about music, and when he does clinics, he goes, you got to have music vocabulary. And what that means for him is a musician does not have an original thought. There's nobody on the planet that's just born with a guitar in their hands gifted so much that what they're playing is sent direct in a bolt from heaven, and they're just so ingenious that they've reinvented this wheel. You are the experience of millions of hours of listening to songs by other people that form who you are. I mean, you have to admit that. I mean, some people are more blessed than others in being virtuosos and stuff like that, but you're kind of the melting pot of your environment and everything you've listened to. So you need to be able to speak that vocabulary. So when you go do a session for a jazz session, the guy will go, I want you to play swing to the section. And Greg will say, you mean like Art Blakey? You mean like, Tony Williams? You start naming names of players, of people that people go, oh, yeah, like Tony Williams. Yeah, now I want you to play bass on this. You want me to play it like Geddy Lee? You want me to play it like Paul McCartney? You throw those names around. Now you're talking vocabulary because people can say, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So that saves a producer time from having to play you a Paul McCartney bass part or for having to play you a Ringo Starr drum part. You just know it because that's who you are. So I think the good thing about Greg and I as a section is that we just come and do a session, and we kind of, all we want to do is whatever we're getting paid, whatever we're doing, however many hours it is, our job is to make that person love us at the end of the day. And when they pay us the way that they're going to pay us, that they felt like that was the best money they could have spent. That's success for us. Yeah. Success for us is doing the job, making them happy, and they'll tell other people about you, and you just have a good attitude. You don't put any crappy attitudes in. You show up. Even if you're not crazy about the song, you make the song as best as it can, but you listen. If somebody wants you to play it just like the demo, you play it just like the demo, you know? And now recently, like with Pro Tools and everything, we usually do like 3 takes of each song. We do the exact demo of what the guy has on his demo. Second version will be like a little bit more intense where we'll incorporate the demo version with some of our stuff. And then we call the third one the Spazzo version, where we just do what we would want to do. If this was our band, and you probably will never use it, but maybe you will. Maybe you edit, because editing's the big thing now. People like to take different takes and stuff. So I think the good thing about Greg and I over the years is that we've spoken the same language for so long. It just helps with the Redcoats and different bands like that. I'll just go, Greg, play that thing that you played, 35 years ago. Oh, yeah, that thing, yeah. It just speeds the process up, and it's just the most fun for me because I love my brother, and he loves me, and we get along, and it just cuts all the junk out in between. Because usually when the drummer and bass player get together, you got to get to know each other and do that whole thing, and sometimes it's magic, and sometimes it's terrible. A lot of bad things can happen. So it's really been a blessing for Greg because I know, spiritually we're on the same page. We know when something's going on in the room that we think is a little off center, not to be judgmental about it, not to be anything, but just to love the people we're around, but to take notice of what's going on in the room and what's going on in the world, whether it's political or spiritually or anything. You just look at the big picture of everything. It's like raising my son, you raise your kids up the way that's right, and you just try and do the right thing. And I think that's with Greg and I, we just try and do the right thing for people, and whether it's Joe or with Dave and David Lee Roth or with Elton, every night you just go out there and just do your best to make these guys, because they're the ones paying you. Yeah, I know when I pay people to play on my stuff, I want them to listen to me and tell them, what I want them to do, but I want them to do what they do, and like when I was producing one of Greg's records called Submarine years ago, and I remember we had Steve Vai, each track was a different guitar player. It was Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Robin Ford, Steve Stevens, all these guys, right? These monster players. And so I would write these songs, and so I'd go into the session, and I was producing it for Greg. So Greg was kind of like a little bit nervous, like make the songs really good and stuff. And I was like, yeah. So I'd tell him what the parts were, and then we'd record the rhythm tracks. I'd be in the room for that. But when each guy would play the solo, I would leave the room and just go, do what you do. So I remember Greg, our last almost fist fight, we almost got it in the pool table of the studio. He goes, man, what are you doing? You should be in there, watching what they're doing. I'm going, Greg, what would I do with Steve Vai playing a solo? What would I do? What would I look over his shoulder and go, no, not that, no, not, what, Greg, we hired these people because they're the best in the world at what they do. You just give them respect to do their thing. And I remember we almost got in a serious fist fight about it because we were just so worked up. And And then years later, we did his album Warning Row Robinson, where we did it all online and sent everybody's parts. And I go, that's the only way we're probably going to be able to do this, is when we're not in the same room driving each other crazy, you know, because there is that brother thing going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, you I really want people, you know, when I work for them, to do it the way I would want it if I hired them. I'll tell them what I want them to do, what I think, but I'm not a guitar player, so I'm sure they can do it better. And if it's not better, then I'll kind of get in there and tell them what I think, you know. But usually when you hire good players, it's always better than you expect, you know.
Well, speaking of producing, you'd mentioned Mike Medina, known from his work with Edgar Winter. He's the band's producer for the Redcoats. Was it a preconceived notion that Mike was going to be the producer for this album and for this band, at least for the first album? Or how did it all work out with Mike?
Well, it kind of, I mean, I've known Mike since college. He was Mike was a drummer, and he just kind of figured things out really fast, and he became one of Dallas's top bass players a couple years later. And then he's playing guitar, he's playing keyboards. He's just really good at a lot of things. So when we got into a song, and I mean, we're basically co-producing, so we're both, I mean, I don't think anybody's really producing it. It's just kind of songs that are just kind of taking its own shape. And Mike will say, well, what if we try, because Greg and I recorded the drums and bass first, and I sent Mike the tracks, and then I said, just put whatever percussion you want on it. And then Andy would come over Mike's house, and then Mike would kind of produce Andy, you know, as much as is needed, because Andy, you don't really need to, you know, they kind of just would collaborate on these parts. I would send my demo parts, and they would, this I like, this I don't like, and they just did their own thing. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like we both said, okay, you're producing this, or we just both said, let's just co-produce it. We say we both did it together, and there's no, you know, producers in the old days was like, well, I'm producing this, and I get 4 points on the record, and I get part of your sales, and I'm going to work with the label on this. I mean, there's, you know, I mean, that stuff still goes on, but this is just a bunch of buddies, you know, to put a label on it, like co-producer or producer, I don't even know. But we just said, let's just say we co-produced it, and we both worked our butts off on it, you know. But Mike he would always get me to go a step further than I wanted to go. And sometimes it's like when John Lennon and Paul McCartney would write together, why it was so good, and they would always say themselves, is because they wouldn't let it go. They'd push each other even when they didn't want to. You know, Paul made John better and vice versa. And they always got the most out of each other. And when they both went their own ways, you could see, even though it was amazing and great songs, together those guys were, you know, you can't touch that. So Mike would always try, not compare myself, you know, us to Lennon and McCartney or anything like that, but it was, you know, I usually do things by myself, and better or worse, I kind of have a plan for the way I want to do it. And you don't see any Grammys on my wall. You don't see any, like, you know, $1 million sales, things like that. But I am writing a lot. I mean, I have probably 10,000 albums of my own, CDs of, you know, produced CDs that are in my attic that nobody will ever hear. And a lot of people would say, man, what a waste of time and energy and money. And I go, if I hadn't done those songs, I probably would have jumped off a bridge, because at the time I needed to do that. I needed to spend $30,000 and go to Capitol Records and do that, because it was a period of my life. You know, you'll never look back at your life when you're on your deathbed and go, I shouldn't have spent that money on my records. You know, it's like, it's the purpose thing. You just do it, you know. So Mikey, and, you know, Mike was always, you know, just trying to get it, you know, maybe don't use loop drums there, put real drums or put real percussion there, you know, get a real B3 here or there, just kind of pushing it. And it's always kind of tough, because it's your own money you're spending, and you go, well, I don't really want to spend money for a B3, but it'll sound better. Okay, yeah. So there's that push and pull thing, and I'm glad he did that, you know. So he kind of pushed the thing along and changed a lot of things, and, you know, it's good for me to have somebody to bounce off things with, you know. Nobody's telling each other what to do, but respectfully putting things out there, you know.
Yeah. So I have two more questions for you, and then I know
yes and no.
Yes and no. I guess I'd answer it. So, hey, good night.
Good night.
So, most of our audience, you know, realize that your work with David Lee Roth and Elton John and Joe Satriani. I did not realize that you worked with Jeff Lynne. Was that back in 2001? And I guess, you know, how did that opportunity come forward to you, working with Jeff Lynne?
I don't know what year that was. I think it was 2003 or 4 or something. It was really weird in my life. It kind of like there's certain tsunamis of gigs and experiences that happens. Like when I was in second year of college, I was going to quit college and going into my third year. I was going to get out of college because I was going to go into sports and stuff. And then in the middle of that year, Maynard called me to go on the road. So I went on the road with him. Moved to LA after that. Started doing different gigs like with Sheena Easton. I had my own band, A440 for a while, and then Gino Vanelli, stuff like that. Little pockets of certain things would happen. And then I got the gig with Dave after Billy left, and that was like 3 years of that. And then I got done with that, and then Joe called and did a couple of years with Joe. Things just kind of did that in my life where it just kind of came in waves. But around 2000, things went a little nuts. I got Greg and I played on some albums with Don Henley, and we were going to go on the road with Don Henley. And then Don decided to do something else or whatever at the time with the Eagles or whatever's going on. So Don Henley's bass player, that was Rick Springfield's bass player, Lance Morrison, went with Don Henley. And then I got called to play with Rick Springfield. So Rick's gig was a gig that I did pretty much for 12 years. But in between those gigs, it would always work out. Like the first year I played with Rick, he took a gig after that with Vegas, and he had to go do this gig for a year and a half for Vegas, and right that same week I got called by Joe to record another record with him, and then I would go on the road with him, and then Rick would come back. I'd play some gigs with him. And then ELO called Craig Fruin, who was a guy I knew from years past, who was a manager, called Greg and I to go to join Jeff Lynne because he's putting ELO back together. I'm like, holy smokes, ELO! I mean, I love ELO, and I learned the songs, and we went and rehearsed for like 4 weeks, and I remember sitting in the rehearsal hall, and we all had in-ears on, and you played ELO songs, you played these songs with people, different bands and stuff. But when you hear the actual guy singing the song that you heard, like Telephone Line, in your ears, and then you're looking right at him, you just go, oh man, God, God has blessed me over and over again with being around these guys. So, there we are playing with Jeff Lynne. And I remember the toughest part with Jeff is because his accent was so thick, I could never understand what he was saying. He turned around and he goes, he looked at me and he goes, there's some different. I go, I'm sorry, what? And he go, you also, it sounded like another language. And I'm going, take my earphones out. What? He's looking at me like, can't you understand a word I'm saying? That was the hardest part of that gig, was I couldn't understand him. But that we rehearsed for like a month, and then we did a VHS storyteller thing that's out on YouTube, and then we did the show to go out on the road, and it was right when 9/11 happened. Yeah, so that was September. So 9/11 happened, and they ended up canceling the whole tour, and Jeff paid us for the whole tour, the whole 3-month tour. He just paid us for the whole thing, and then they didn't do it, I mean, Jeff is a genius anyway. I mean, he's got so many songs working in movies and TV and all that stuff. I mean, he's just a brilliant guy, and he's not hurting. So, and now he's back doing it with a different band and everything. But that was really, really fun. And it was the same thing. Same guy, Craig Fruin, called me to do Boss Skaggs, and that was another freak out moment when the first time we played Lowdown, and then we're playing the groove in the beginning, and then when I heard Boss get on the mic, he goes, look out for that Lowdown. He does that voice thing. I'm going, that's Boss Skaggs. I used to listen to him in my tape player in my van when I was a kid. That is pretty cool, in your life. And when you would hear David Lee Roth sing in Panama or something, you're just going, wow, that's pretty darn cool, So there was a big barrage, and then getting the Ringo thing. It was like a couple years after that. So there was like a 5-year period where it was just bang, 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 and things were happening. And that doesn't happen all the time, I mean, it comes in spurts, and that's kind of what the way music business is. It's feast or famine, and right now I think everybody's having a dose of famine,
Absolutely. I have one more question for you, then we're going to let you go. Okay. So, the A Little Ain't Enough album from David Lee Roth. You were fortunate enough to be a part of the recording process with your brother. You also were involved with Jason Becker. And we've heard all kinds of different stories. It's just all hearsay about Jason Becker's health during those recording times on that album. How much of it was real and how much it wasn't? Was his health actually noticeably declining at that time, or was it one of those kind of things where you're lucky to get the work out of him that he did get?
Yeah, well, we were all there when it happened, and it was just such a strange, sad thing. I remember we were with Dave, and Dave was auditioning guitar players after Steve left, and he heard about this really young guy that could play like Eddie and Steve and all this stuff, and he was mature beyond his years, and he came down the basement at Dave's house and was just amazing and got the gig, and he had songs that he had written, and Dave incorporated the songs, and we rehearsed for a bunch, and then we ended up going up to Vancouver with Bob Rock at his studio, and we were out there recording, but I remember when we were rehearsing at Dave's house, Jason and I, because Jason is a huge San Francisco 49er fan when Joe Montana and Steve Young were around, and we would play football every day in Dave's backyard and just throw the ball, and he was an amazing football player. I mean, he could throw the ball, and he's very gifted and stuff, and I remember one day he threw the ball at me, and he kind of grabbed his upper leg and started going, man, there's something pinching on my leg. I think my pants are too tight. Something's going on. And he was feeling it, and he's like, that's the very beginning of it, that I noticed that it all started happening, something innocent like that. He just started getting tests and stuff, and then everything started declining, and it was fast, So by the time, weeks later, we were up in Vancouver, and I remember Dave hired Steve Hunter to play rhythm guitar on things and also kind of be Jason's nurse at the time, because Steve was a registered nurse, and he would administer Jason's shots, because it kind of came on him really fast. And Jason was freaking out because he was losing his feelings in his fingers and his hands, and it was freaking him out, and rightly so, because all the stuff that he played, required so much physical, dexterity and stuff. And I remember being in the hotel. We were staying in this funky hotel, and I remember the doors were open. Jason was right across from me, and his door was open. And I remember the first day he had to administer his own shot, and he sat there for an hour trying to get the guts up to put the needle in his leg. And he's just looking at me like, man, this is crazy. Never thinking it was going to get as bad as it did, And so Steve would give him shots and stuff. And I remember we finished the record, and then I left the band, and then Jason just kind of declined really fast. And then Dave went on his way on the road. He had to get other guys to replace him, and they went on the road to support the record. But I mean, the recording process, Jason was unbelievable. He played everything, did everything they asked him, and he wrote some great songs, and he was monstrous, and it's just so sad, because you go, especially with the passing of Eddie and stuff. I mean, the guitar world definitely would be talking about Jason Becker more right now had he stayed healthy, And so over the years, I mean, I've kept in touch with him a lot, and I've gone up. I haven't gone up lately, and I feel badly about that, but I would go up and see him once a year. And I remember going to see him, and he would be his dad, Gary, and his wife, Pat, amazing parents. And I've kind of hung out with them a bunch and kind of gone through it with them, and, nothing like being there every day. But I would go up there, and I remember one day, Gary, his dad, had worked out a whole language with him, with this chart where every letter would have a eye signal where his eyes would go to say the letter A. He'd move his eye because he had lost all his hand and leg movements, and he was in the bed at that time. And they worked out this whole language, Then they worked out this whole language on a computer for him to write. And then he would send me songs of him composing these orchestra songs and all this stuff. I mean, and the crazy thing is his brain is like 120 degrees going full steam ahead, but he can't move. And that's just so devastating for guys that, just looking at him and knowing what he could do. And somehow they've managed to stay positive through the whole thing, and I need to go back up there and see them. And I mean, they could be a better family, and it's just really, really sad. But you know, it's really a tough one.
It is. That's all the questions that we have for you tonight. You've been a fantastic guest. We want to thank you so much once again for your participation.
Thank you guys, man. I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me, and it's great what you guys are doing. And you got to promise me, though, being Chicago boys, that you will have a Lou Malnati's pizza or a Gino's pizza for me soon.
Oh yeah, we most definitely will. Actually, we are 2.5 hours west of Chicago, so we're on the Mississippi River. Actually, we're like butted right next to Davenport, Iowa. So we're like right on the river. So
go ahead. What is the Chicago pizza place for you guys?
Gino's East. Gino's East. Yeah.
They just put one up in our neighborhood. So I just love Chicago pizza, man. So I whenever I hear Chicago, I think of Sammy Sosa and Big Fat Pizza. So I'm sorry for sounding so simple-minded, but yeah, and having the coldest weather on the planet sometimes.
Well, I got news for you. Chicago pizza does not hold a candle to the pizza here where we live in the Quad Cities.
Really? What is your thing?
Well, there's a stable here. It's called Harris Pizza, and there are so many former Harris Pizza workers that opened up their own pizza places. So everybody is a big copycat from Harris Pizza. That they try to do their own thing. Anyway, this is like the hotbed.
We have the other half of the town likes Happy Joe's. It's war going on between Happy Joe's and Harris.
Happy Joe's and Harris. It's just a big pizza area here, and I don't know why. It's not like we have a large Italian community here. It's kind of strange, but anyway.
See, you guys are speaking pizza vocabulary. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. So
I like it.
Yeah. So anyway, what I wanted to ask you is that we had so many more questions about so many albums that you played on. Could we send the invitation to you somewhere down the road, maybe in the next, after the first of the year, to have you back on to maybe break down some albums for us that you've worked on? Would that be possible?
No.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I'm ready. Let's do it now.
Unfortunately, we're under time constraints here. So, but what I wanted to do is, Jeff, and I both thought would be a good idea is that obviously we couldn't get to all the questions, is maybe to have you come back and talk about maybe an album or two that you would like to talk about, and an album or two that we would like to talk about.
I would love that. You guys are swell fellas, and I appreciate you having me and listening to me just go off. I appreciate it very much.
It's been fantastic. Is there anything that we did not promote or plug that you would like to promote before we let you go for the evening?
No, that's awesome. I mean, the Reddcoats is the thing I got going now. I got a band coming out probably in about 6 months that I'm kind of secretly doing with Rick Springfield. We have a band coming out with that we're doing. It's kind of like a Beatle sounding band of songs that sound like the Beatles, and we're going to go to Beatle jail for it, and we're happy to do it. But that's kind of in the process. We just finished it about 2 months ago, and they're making it out vinyl right now, and they're doing some things with it for marketing, and I could probably talk about that when it comes out. Right now, it's I don't know if that's public knowledge or not, but it's something that doing that, and there's other stuff coming up, and it'd be good to talk about.
Oh, fantastic!
Awesome.
I'm an open book, man. Open me up.
Okay, well, you have to do me one favor before I let you go.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So you got to reach out to your brother Greg for me, because we invited him on the podcast about 1.5 years ago, and he was just, at the time, this was like pre-COVID stuff, and he was just blitzed with work, and he just said, "Hey, I appreciate it." He just couldn't do it at the time.
He sucks. I hate that guy.
So just do us a favor and tell him how awesome we are, and we'd love to have him on and to have his stories as well sometime down in the future, man. I appreciate it.
You got it. I will tell him. I'm going to talk to him in about an hour.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, cool. All right. Well, that's all we have for the evening. This is how it's going to work out. We have a couple of episodes that we're going to release before yours. So your episode will be all edited from Jeff, the editing wizard here, the week after Thanksgiving. And so as soon as it's all cleaned up, Jeff will send me the link, and then I will text the link to you, and it'll go out, and we're going to put it out on social media everywhere. It'll be on Rock Rage Radio, podcast radio, internet radio, on a Tuesday evening at 10 p.m. Central Time. So if you didn't download it or whatever, it's going to be available for them to listen to on internet radio. So anyway,
awesome.
We want to
appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys bringing up the Reddcoats and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're excited.
All right. Well, we want to thank you again, and have a great evening. And I'll be in touch with you in a couple weeks.
All right, guys. Take care. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, man. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Can I say it like Donald Duck?
Hello, everybody. This is Matt Bissonette from the Reddcoats. You're listening to Murphy's Shocking Podcast.
Fabulous. That sounded perfecto. I think we might have to do the Donald Duck one and that one, too, together.
Sneak it in at the very end, at the tail end of the...
I almost
like
got the gig. I almost got the gig doing Donald Duck when the guy died in the 80s, but I couldn't speak Spanish. So I used to be pretty good at it, believe it or not. But
oh, cool.
That's a gift gone by. All right, guys. Take care, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
Right.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody pulls the plug and says